Thank you everybody for coming to the Shakespeare Beyond Borders Alliance Equality Shakespeare Festival. I'm Chris Laoutaris, and this is the third in the series of today's incredible sessions by poet authors who have been inspired by Shakespeare. Earlier we had Luke Kennard, and then after that we had Sally Bailey. So if you missed those, you'll have an opportunity to catch up. We're going to upload all of these videos onto the YouTube channel for Birmingham University. So plenty of opportunities to watch any sessions that you've missed. I'm joined today by Dr. Neal Hall, MD, who's a multi-award winning poet. He trained in ophthalmology at Harvard University's Medical School and was in private practice for over 20 years. He's the author of numerous books of poems translated into multiple languages and circulated across the globe, which deal with themes of dignity, equality, social justice, and racial prejudice. There's only time here to mention a mere fraction of his awards and accolades, and I encourage you to link onto Dr. Hall's website, which we've attached to his profile at the end of our online program, and there you'll see a fuller account of his achievements, many residencies and fellowships. Just some of his recent awards include a nomination for the Japan Best Translation Book Award in 2017 for the translation of his book, Weight of Just Black, winner of the 2019 National Black Caucus of the American Library Association Best Poetry Book Award, first prize place in the New York Poetry Book Awards, and finalist in the Eyelands International Book Awards 2019 for his book, Door of No Return. He's also the winner of the Three Rock Writers Resort Residency Program in Crete for his book, Diary of the Heart in 2020. The Trembling Tiber, which is this fantastic book, which Neal will be sharing with us today, is a collection of incredibly powerful poems exploring the themes of race and social justice, inspired by Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. And it won the Eyelands International Book Awards in 2019. And when I first read these poems, I knew I just had to interview him about them. And I'm so honored and delighted he has agreed to be with us today. Thank you so much, Neal, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And as I understand it, you're going to read us some of your poems, which I'm so looking forward to. And later on, we'll have a chat about them. And so in a moment, I'll switch off my mic and my camera so that you can have the floor. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. When will Black men and countrymen unite together to be free? Let the word go forth. Leached of history, heritage, we've been terrorized 20 score years of torturous tasks and the brutal lash of callous taskmasters. Black men and countrymen, I and you and all of us, plebeians of Rome, noosed our gullet to captive bond, cogs and Caesars, chariot wheels, whilst tyranny, disguised, draped in a robe of a republic, rules our day, a tyrant. And we had rather be dogs, whimpering at half the light of a full moon, than a pack of wolves bearing our canines, growling, howling at a howl so loud our darkness that the Tiber would tremble at its banks and make concave its shores, resonating the replications of our growls. Black men, countrymen, I and you and all of us, our lives made dispensable, valueless to be made cash, redeemable by tyrants, belying democracy. Black men, countrymen, thus from us, let the word go forth that this part of tyranny we do bear, we can at our pleasure shake off to be the scrum of unrelenting wolves, pack and prowl and pursuit our prey, freedom. And let the word go forth that no stony tower, no walls of beaten brass, no airless dungeons, no strong links of iron can restrain nor constrain our strength of urgency to be free. And let the word go forth. Let every nation know we will no longer permit the continued undoing of our right to be, which this Caesar has long committed itself in denying and living in denial with itself. Let the word go forth. We will no longer be able to Cain to enable Cain, nor Remus to Romulus, only to have Rome draped in republic. Black men, countrymen, let every person, every nation know, whether they wish us well or ill, that we shall defy paying any price, avert any hardship, lay siege against any burden, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure our liberties and justice for all men and all women. And let us not be dogs whimpering at the moon, but be this warrior wolf pack, canine and howl. Let us be gladius in the hands of gladiators, growling at the moon, mutually pledging our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honors. Black men, countrymen, let these words go forth from the air and our lungs to friends and foes alike, that the torch of urgency has been lit. It burns fiercely, now eternally, to let every Caesar know that this part of tyranny that we do bear, we can, at our collective pleasure, shake off and be these ronin wolves, canine, packed in pursuit of our prey, freedom. I often think about living the lie, clean from the purpose. It is not that we love truth less, but that we love living the lie more, under the pretense of perfection, constantly in the making. We, the people, in order to appear to be constantly forming a more perfect union, falsely pretend and profess to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, and that all men abide by these deeds, except those we, the people. 'Tis but marrow from fame, feeble tongues. There is but one mind in all these we, the people, and it is bent. Men construing things after their own fashion, clean from the purpose of the thing itself. 'Tis but common proof of lowliness. Colorable, they say there is no Black America, there is no white America, there is no Latino America, there is no Asian America. There are but these bent states, united in a we the people America. More marrow from feigned feeble tongues of what they say and not what they do when they do what they truly do. We the people point a finger on the water's surface and call it the moon, clean from the purpose of the thing itself. America was built on fear, not on courage, not on imagination, not on an unbeatable determination to not point its finger on the water's surface and call it the moon, clean from the purpose of this thing itself. Let us start with what America calls the truth, and now call it a lie. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. Shrunken from these measures, it's not that we love truth less, but we love living this lie more. Had we as many honorable eyes as horrid hands, failing to see, vision fair and fortune, our eyes failing to see in things reflecting its eyes, reflecting in the eyes of others. Night hangs low below our eyes. We have not in them paired oneness and show of unity they were born of, and whose optics doeth lose its bend of awe and singular point of focus. Severed from ourselves with a downward look on ourselves, we fail to see that we are the predator and prey of ourselves. We are at war with ourselves, failing to see that we are at war against ourselves. Insight, no more within our sight, our eyes sightless to our brother's timeless trail of tears that have not our sympathetic greed, nor we. In greed, we have wasted eternities of freedom, purchasing favorable opinions from gray-haired white voices looking empty past men's 7 deadly sins to payments passed beneath humanity's table to deceivingly say our worst deeds are good. Many a man comes, rapacious, to bathe his insatiable hands, the sanguineous fountain of greed, spurting greened blood he could never drain his stained hands of. Had we as many honorable eyes as these horrid hands, we would see ourselves reflecting in one another's eyes. Vision fair and fortunate. Our eyes fail to see in things reflecting its eyes, reflecting in the eyes of those we pray to pluck, then prey upon. I had a plea to equality, crowned of equities. 3 times theocracy, tyranny, tyrants tempted you be the sole bearer of this crown. Thrice tried this trio, thy hand be tied, and 3 times by the back of thy hand you did not put by the offer sworn to be worn the heads of all. Thus I displead the equities, his noble girth, my right of birth, of equal time and worth to wear upon my head that which you wear unwell upon yours. I, no hour as fit as this hour, do open my mouth to beg voice and utterance of tongue to grit into my teeth. A mournful plea, oh ye wreath, I too to wear your one jeweled crown, sworn to be worn the heads of all. I plead this feathery weight of equal weight that is but a feather's weight. When worn in parity, when bore we together upon level-shouldered men, bearing equal heads to rest the laurel headdress equities, lined in gilded leaf quality, dignity, humility, upon all heads you wear unwell upon yours. 3 times a plea to equities, his noble girth, my right of birth, claimed now, worn now to one head your head, sworn to be worn the heads of all, which you wear unwell solely upon your head of tyranny. Many of the methods that we use to fight for freedom are antiquated and rigged. And I always say, if your slave master gives you solutions to free yourself from him, you know that they're rigged. Protest march. Tired, valiant foot soldier whose foot march has no forward foot marks. A gray, emaciated, whiskered stallion, sunken, saddled from withers end to coupling. A low, sitting, slow riding saddle of resistance. We've ridden far too long, far too far, down this road, up this hill. It does not respond to the reins pull, turn the way of the bit it bites, nor are spurs to urge it on, down this road, up this hill. It's gallop, a canter. It's count, a walk. It's walk, a 3-legged stance that does not take any other stand, which has its hour with every man, down this road, up this hill. This march, this protest march, a tired, valiant foot soldier, I've to put the pastor that it comes to know the end its day's business, and that its day has ended, and the end is known. What being white? I asked the question, what being white? White. What should be in that name, white? Why should white be sounded more than black? Sound them both, become the mouth as well. Are we not two lions littered in one day? Why should white be sounded more than black? Write them together. Black is as fair a name written as white. Is not morning, is not night the same day? Same made man unlikes, equal, just the same. Stand them side by side, neither be higher lawyer, neither a shadow cast the other. Weigh them, black is as heavy. Gravity pulls equally their names to our ears. What then be in that name white? Why should it be sounded more than black? No life and no lifeline. This is the title poem of the book. The Trembling Tiber. Sounds deafened, lungs depleted of air, a Caesar eye face down, sinking as deep as my sunken heart sinks in me, a downward drift, fathoms beneath the torrent Tiber's raging maelstrom of injustice, inequality, and humanity. A Caesar eye, a slave had not my life been made to drown, face down the depths of blue, watered under tides, vexed and vortex and ill heart and distempered contempt, stemming me, tempest tossing me side to side, this blue, red sea, black in me. Swollen by its waters, I've swallowed the waters that have swallowed me. This blue torrent, turbulence, black in me. Sinking no lifeguard, I, a Cassius, who darest thou Caesar leap and bade freedom a follow. No life, a lifeline, I, a time of Martin, a time of Malcolm, a time of Gandhi, souls committed this copious abyss that does not render its dead to shouldered, spent Caesar, trembling, a wretched slaves bent, broken body sinking, disposed of within the sinews of the troubled Tiber, trembling, tumultuous in its enormity. While a visiting artist and scholar at the American Academy of Rome, I was detained at gunpoint by a soldier of the Italian Special Forces. He thought I was an illegal African alien, in large part because I was in the wrong part of an affluent portion of Rome. And during that detainment, looking down the barrel of a gun, I asked myself over and over and over again, what was the probable cause? Probable cause. I, the face of Othello, a night without moon nor stars, the absence of white, the knife thou dost thrust, et tu, Brute, its deepest depth. I, the race of Othello, a melon tone that drones the monotone standard, permitting undertone, armed prerogatives, unreasonable warrant, my suspect. Ill-lighted, I am the preponderance of that standard of criminality they once stand when night is made to stand before a day's huge judgment. Othello's face, I am this preponderance of evidence. Day walkers need no warrant issue except the warrant to want, to not, to see the dead of night rise a daylight participant in a worldwide daydream of American light greed. When the eyes of March are both judge and jurors. Black is the preponderance of evidence. Whites need C for probable cause. Cause to violate black, black persons, black houses, black papers, black effects with unreasonable searches and seizures. The knife thou dost thrust, et tu, Brute, its deepest depth, the dead of night. No oath or affirmation need be they, other than their pledge to one another, their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor, that this discreet dishonor, particularly describing black places, black faces, black things for search and seizure. I, the face of a fellow of the night. That preponderance of flawed evidence whites see as probable cause when the eyes of March, 'tis my judge and jurist. Every time there's a catastrophe, every time there's a school shooting, every time there's a racially motivated killing, beating, we do nothing but offer our thoughts and prayers. Again and again. There is no amendment, nor is handgun instruments so fit a need its amending as the Second Amendment. If I thought prayer would move, I'd be moved to pray. When the Second Amendment trumps the Sixth Commandment to make rich the thoughtless hands of the most unnoble of bloodlines. Yet we offer our thoughts and prayers. When the gun is emptied, is round, and the sounds transposed of those slain about the ground, we then again want to heal the gaping wounds within us that persist daily among us. When the teleprompter prompts the reader, the abridged, made for TV epitaph, we kiss dead Caesar's wounds and dip scripted red anger and anguish and betrayed, desecrated blood to say on cue, our thoughts and prayers are with you. When they first thank first, the first responders for responding first, when they acknowledge first the esprit de corps in cooperation of local, county, state, and federal law enforcers who enforce the full weight and force of their agencies for violation of the Sixth Commandment while overlooking the Second Amendment's complicity in murder. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. When again they want to know the motive, the time frame, the response time, within the time frame, the timely place walks on stars fallen untimely. Again and again, our thoughts and prayers in the midst of your appalling silence, appalling apathy, appalling complicity, until an alleged shooter whose purple hand reeks with gun smoke shoots you, yours, to your appalling cries, appalling disdain, appalling duplicity, as we bury your dead in our heads and dare again offer our fleeting thoughts in empty, repeated prayers that fall like the fallen on deaf ears again and again, the Second Amendment guns and bullets amidst your thoughts and prayers. I went back one day and reread something that he said. And this time it was so moving, so impactful. I was compelled to repeat and write what he said. He said, all we say to America is to be true to what you said on paper, because he said somewhere I read, you said all men, not just white men, were created equal with inalienable rights. Somewhere he said, I read, you said 3/5 did not exist anymore with your abolishment of slavery. And somewhere I read, you said we had the measured right against unreasonable searches and seizures. And somewhere I read, you said we had a right to a fair trial by a jury of our peers, and that we were innocent until proven guilty, not by our absence of whiteness. And somewhere I read you said there would be no gerrymandering or color-coded poll taxes to undermine one man, one vote of every Black man. Somewhere I read you said on parchment, on papyrus, on your letterhead paper, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And now is their necessity. And all we've said to democracy was somewhere be true to what you said on paper, because he said there'll be difficult days that lie ahead. But it really didn't matter with him. He said he had been to the mountaintop. He said he didn't mind like anybody. He wanted to live a long life. Longevity had its place. But he was not concerned about that. He said he just wanted to do his God's will, and that his God had allowed him to go to the mountaintop. And that he had looked over and he had seen the promised land. He said that he may not get there with you, but he wanted you, the Black man, white man, Jew and Gentile, to know that as a people, we will get to the promised land. He said he was happy. He was not worried about anything. He was not fearing any man. His eyes had seen the glory of the coming of his Lord. And when he said the urgency of now is now, an angry scowl did plow democracy's brow, and lean and hungry look, and stared it upon the king with ungentle eyes. And with one shot, they shot him, dropped him there on that spot where he said, we've got some difficult days that lie ahead. And still today, lacking the will still, all we say to democracy is somehow, somewhere, be true to what you said on paper. Be true to what you said on paper. He said, he said, he said. And I heard a poet pray. He said, Father, forgive them not, for they know what they do. Their conspiracies unseen, hidden deep within their plausible deniabilities. He said, Father, oh Father, forgive them not, for they know what they do. They know what they do. They know. They know. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for inviting me.
Wow, thank you so much, Neal. I mean, you've got a reputation for being a powerful orator, but you don't realize just how powerful until you hear it. And that was extraordinary. And it's sort of, I've now got a completely different question that I want to ask you about this, because it just suddenly, it suddenly occurred to me just from hearing you speak. I'm interested in what your vocal influences are there, because there's some, if you think, you know, this is a book inspired by Shakespeare, but then there's a completely different vocal influence here. There's a melding of voices here that is very powerful and very unique. So where do your vocal and oratorical influences come from?
Well, I'll answer it straight off by saying initially, when the sun rises, I don't ask where it comes from. I just feel its warmth. And so I don't know if I can answer that. I feel and hear, and then I don't write, but I transcribe it, but I have to feel it and hear it at such a depth in order to write it, and then to come back and say it. Now, having said that, you know, I've always admired Martin Luther King as an orator, and Malcolm X as an orator. Did there anything that slip in there? Probably. I know growing up, my pastor in the church was a wonderful speaker, and that may or may have had some influence on me as well. But uh, I think the bulk of it is just what's in my, what's in me, what the it says to me and put in me, and then my saying it back.
Mm. Yeah. Is that what drew you to Shakespeare? Was it equally that instinctive thing? Why Julius Caesar? Why Shakespeare? Was it the incident, that horrendous incident in Rome, that sparked it, or was there something else that drew you? What was the personal pull?
Well, it was a horrendous incident in Rome that initially drew me to that. Because once I started putting things together, Ides of March, oh, Caesar was killed in that day. I could have been killed. And about that time, the director of the American Academy of Rome suggested that we try to find something in Rome to inspire our work. And so, with that in mind, I had visited the ruins of where apparently Caesar was killed, and thought about that. And that led me to Shakespeare and why he wrote the book, trying to show some parallels between the social, political, and economic setting of Rome with the Elizabethan period, and how really the nature of man has not changed. And I thought that was just very interesting. And so I wanted to try to see if I can do that same thing with my words and his words to show that it still has not changed.
Yeah, that's one of those powerful things about this book, is just the way it does collapse those two moments of time, the then and the now, in that really powerful way. But also just the way you take Shakespeare's words and you blend them, like in the poem "Let the Word Go Forth." I was struck by your use of the famous "Friends, Romans, Countrymen" speech, and I just wanted to know, what did it mean to you to have that as the phrase "Black men, countrymen" as a refrain in that poem?
Well, that refrain is a very popular. I mean, I think most people around the world know that, so it's recognizable. So I wanted to use that. The other thing I thought was very important about that is the call to duty, a call to action. And rarely do we talk about things, but rarely is there a call to action, and then what that action should be. So this was an attempt to do a call to action, but Black men first, and then countrymen, all of us. And I strongly believe that as the Black man goes, all men goes. As the Black man's boat rises, the boat rises for everybody. And so that's why I put Black man first, but it's really all of us. It's a call to action to all of us, but the Black man has to lead the way.
Yeah, and I felt there is, in this collection, I felt that sense of frustration, that sense of wanting to call people to action. And it's interesting, Julius Caesar is a very appropriate play for that, because it is a play about the power of words and about the power of the influence of words and what the influence of words can do. Also on many levels, including a political level. And so, yeah, I mean, you mentioned this sort of that link between hierarchy and racial hierarchies and social hierarchies. Were you thinking in those terms? Because you do seem to blend those, I guess, categories of power in your work. Was that a kind of self-conscious thing?
Well, there are social and economic hierarchies, and I strongly believe that they are built on, created and sustained on the principle of greed. Okay, greed-based cognitive dissonance, greed-based hypocrisy, greed-based appalling silence. And greed uses certain tools to exact the resources and powers it needs to establish a social hierarchy. And these tools, which we are very much don't really understand how they function, these tools are race, the tools are religion, nationality, culture, your gender, your age. All these are tools that greed uses to subjugate us, to divide us, and thus exploit us. It is not, and I'll take one in particular, it is not a race war. And they have many of us of color thinking that, and they have many whites that are not tuned in thinking that. But really, it's a war of economics. That's all it is. It's a war of economics. And race is one of the tools, one of the weaponries that are used in that war of economics. And I think to the extent that we begin to understand that, we will bring a different type of weaponry to our fight for freedom. And things like, you know, what I mentioned, the protest march, it's ineffective, things of that nature. And Martin Luther King came around to that in his speech, in this I Have a Dream speech. He came around to that. In the middle of that speech, which we don't hear about, Martin Luther King basically said that the protest march is ineffective. But if we do this one thing, we don't have to yell, we don't have to talk, we don't have to fight, we don't have to throw Molotov cocktails. We don't have to do any of these things. If we bring together a collective economics and spend our money in a way in which we change their behavior. And we're too busy trying to change hearts and minds of heartless people and people who have no mind to change.
So this is really revelatory in terms of your poem Protest March. It now makes so much sense. This idea of a kind of tired, valiant foot soldier, in the sense that the protest march is no longer enough, in a sense.
It was never enough. I mean, it brought some attention, but it was never enough. And if I was your subjugator, I would love for you to fight me protesting. I would love for you to, because I still go to the bank while you're out protesting. I would love it. But to fight me on economics, now we have something.
Yeah, so I can see it's very much like an Elizabethan court in that sense, where divide and conquer is the kind of rule.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's always been that way. And it's interesting that after that speech, after that revelation Martin Luther King gave, and he even went furthermore to say to Black people, do not buy Coca-Cola from Coke from Coca-Cola. Do not buy, I think it was bread from Sealtest and Wonder Bread. He even named the corporations that we should not spend our money with. That next day they shot him.
Right.
So wonder how close to the real solution he was.
Yeah, is this why? Oh, sorry. Yeah, carry on.
Please, please.
I was just asking, is this why there is a sense in your poetry of the need to see, like seeing, because you've got a poem called Failure to See, and you've got other poems like Rods and Cones that refer to visuals. Is this what's lying behind that sort of almost anxious desire to get people to see something?
Yes, I mean, it's see, from the beginning of our lives, we are indoctrinated to see and think and act a certain way. And in many cases, it divides us and pulls us apart. And when my mother took me home to her house, I was separate and distinct from the house next door. I was separate and distinct from the town next door, the state, the country. It divides us. And so it's important to begin to see what was done, how we were indoctrinated, and then to begin to undo it. And then in the process of doing it, then moving forward, and you can see better what's being done and how it's being done to you. And then you're in a better position to fight it. But if you don't see it right, you don't recognize it for what it is, then you're fighting a war that doesn't exist, or you're not equipped to fight. And you're told and sold the tools by the master of how to free yourself from the master.
Okay.
They never work.
Yeah. Did that cause a kind of conflict in you when using Shakespeare? because Shakespeare is often thought of as, if you want to use the phrase, a tool of the master. It, you know, we still think of today, not just historically, but in some circles, Shakespeare has been used as a kind of colonial tool in that sense. It's often synonymous with elitism. Did you have a sense of, I don't know, tension in your use of Shakespeare, or did you feel that you were taking this sort of iconic concept of Shakespeare and somehow overturning that kind of elitism?
Yeah, it's more of the latter. And I think what's important in your question is my use and not how it used me.
Yeah.
My use. And so if bad men can do bad things with good resources, good men can do good things with bad resources. You see? So irrespective of what was said about Shakespeare and Julius Caesar with respect to what you just said, it doesn't matter. It's my intent and how I use it for hopefully a good purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that sense, I was interested in your kind of uses of Julius Caesar, because Caesar is not the same figure and doesn't mean the same thing all the way through. So anybody coming to your book will get, I guess, a range of different Caesars. Tell us a bit more about that. I mean, what was your thinking there? I mean, what kinds of Caesars are there in this book?
Yeah, I wanted there to be many Caesars because it's the context of the poem that tells you which Caesar it is. Is it Caesar the tyrant? Is it Caesar the slave? Is it Caesar the weak man? You know, that kind of thing. But I just didn't want Caesar to be, you know, as we are taught in the book. But and even throughout the play, I mean, he was various ways. I mean, when he was in the Tiber River during that tumultuous storm, he was very weak and almost drowned, and Cassius had to save him. So I wanted to have different aspects of man portrayed under the title of Caesar, but the context of that poem would tell you which Caesar it was.
Yeah, in that sense, he's a very sort of metamorphic figure. Did you have a sense of what the Tiber meant to you? Because you called the book The Trembling Tiber, and you've got a title poem of that name which you read. What does the Tiber signify for you in this book?
I think subjugation, slavery, misogyny, all the isms that are out there that swallow us up and take us under, and are just horrendous things that make our lives difficult. This thing we call institutional, systemic isms, and I'm very cautious of the phraseology institutional, systemic, because all that is a way of people hiding their contact details. Okay, they can hide within, oh, it's institutional, that's systemic, but institutional and systemic is us. It's all of us. We are that. We're just hiding within that. So the Tiber raging like that was just a metaphor for all the isms, all the things we do to marginalize people and have them live in that marginalization.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before, sort of hiding their contact details. It kind of reminds of, that idea. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I like the way you phrased that. Sort of reminds me of.
Yeah. We don't put a name or face to it, but it's almost like it's this thing that out there that no one is responsible for, but that thing is us. It's our next door neighbor. It's us. Institutionalized systemic isms is no more than us hiding our contact details.
Yeah, and it's similar with phrases like unconscious bias, because one of your phrases, that kind of "they know what they do" kind of refrain. It's quite easy to hide behind those big totalizing phrases where you lose the specificity of the action. Yeah, absolutely. And I should also say at this point, if anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or in the queue. We've got a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So if anybody wants to ask a question, I'll keep my eye on those. Feel free to do so. I also wanted to ask you, just in terms of the act of writing poetry, I mean, what are your thoughts about what poetry itself can achieve here when it comes to racial equality? And can poetry affect real change in your opinion, in your estimation? And do you have any advice for other poets who might want to be writing about issues that are important to them?
I think real change comes about when there's pain. Pain is the agent of change. And when you create enough pain in people's lives, they will change their behavior. Poetry can open eyelids for people to see their role. Whether they change their behavior or not is something, you know, to be seen. But poetry, I think, at least it frees me and it wakes me up and away from the indoctrination that I've had, and hopefully others, so that they will stand up and take action. But poetry alone will not do that. Change things. It can help you take action, and it's the action that can help change things. And that action has to be, as I've said before, along the lines of collective economic empowerment, collective economic changing the behavior of people. To a poet, I would say, write, but don't think that alone is what's going to do it. It's not. We've been writing poetry since the beginning of time, and we're still here talking about it. So poetry truly could be the answer, the singular answer, along with the other arts that move people. It would have worked by now. And the one thing that we've left out, and we continue to leave out, is the understanding that this is an economic war. It's not a gender war. It's not a religious war. It's not a cultural war. It's not a war of nationalities. It's just purely an economic war.
Yeah, I can see all those, the complexities of your book weaving together there in the way that you use Shakespeare in terms of those social contexts and the way you inflect that then through your consideration of the racial context. I can now see much more clearly in discussion with you just how those lock together in a really powerful way. We've had a question in the chat from Anna Cruz. Dr. Hall, could you please talk about the meaning of the door in the background for your poetry reading? So is there an additional meaning to the door? Everybody loves the door.
I just can't find a better background. That's why I'm too lazy. It's so easy. It's the door to my balcony.
It is incredible. I mean, it's a lovely backdrop for poetry reading, and a genuine antique, as I understand it. Yeah, definitely. I just want to ask you about so what is your process? Because I'm always fascinated, because as you know, and you very, very kindly read my poetry. So I'm always fascinated by the act of writing. So tell me, if you could, about your own process for writing poetry. I mean, do you go with your head first or your heart? Do you have to feel your way into a poem, or can you also sort of intellectualize it? I mean, what's your process for writing?
Life is a holistic experience, and I always say air in, air out. Living the life I have puts me in a position for, I'm going to call it writing right now, but it's not really writing. It's writing.
Oh, sorry, Neil, your volume's gone down a bit. Is your microphone?
Hold on, I think I dropped my earpiece.
Oh, excellent.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
When you've been down, we get it. So when you write, you bring everything. So it is your heart, it's your brain, it's the five senses. And you have to bring all those to bear to write. But I have to let them go. You know, I may think of something, but I have to let them go. I always say the it. I wait for the it. Another poet that I met, he called it the lady, when the lady speaks. It's that something that comes from nowhere that speaks to you. And if you chase it, if I chase it, I won't get it. It's like the butterfly. If you sit still, the butterfly will land on your shoulder. So I learned, I established something what I call passively listening intently. That's listening all the time to add it just below the level of consciousness. So I am aware when I hear it, but I don't go chase it, but I'm always aware of it. And it may give you an entire poem, rarely. It may give you just a nugget, and then you begin to go with that. And you may at first say, or I may first say, oh, I'm going to go in this direction. But as you transcribe, it may take you in a different direction. And you have to be open enough to go where it's taking you. And so that's how I learned to write. I say I don't really write. I listen and transcribe. I feel, and I feel as deeply as I possibly can for this genre, which is a very painful one. So I'm not afraid to feel the pain. There's times that I don't want to be too happy because I want to be in touch with the pain because it inspires me. It brings forth the speaks, and then I transcribe that as best I can on the paper.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, you do sense that there's sometimes raw, authentic emotion that comes out of your poetry, but it's a productive, authentic emotion that it does reach towards that desire for change. So it's not a purely confessional work that you're doing. I think it's part of a form of social activism which wants to make real, genuine changes. I think we've got we've got another question in the chat from Rebecca White. Thank you, Dr. Hall, for an inspiring talk and reading. You spoke passionately about how protest marches are not enough. To what extent is your poetry like or unlike a protest march? That's a really good question.
Yeah, it's again what we talked about. What do you tell a poet? What advice would you give a poet? And what I said was, you write, but you don't write in absence of the understanding that it's the tool that you use for change and to free yourself is economics. So yes, this is verbal protest, but it's not severed from the understanding, the clear understanding, the action is based on economics. Okay.
Yeah.
To realize freedom is based on economics. Freedom is not free. There's a cost to obtain it and a cost to sustain it. And we have not paid that price yet. And that's why we're still subjugated.
Yeah, and so poetry gives you an opportunity to bring that nuance in a way that it's harder to get across in the sort of visual language, I guess, or the language of a protest march can't be.
Yeah, I mean, the poetry initially is for me. It frees me. It gives me an opportunity to think about things, to come up with what I believe, to basically undo the indoctrination, lifelong indoctrination that I had and continue to experience. To recognize now that that's indoctrination. And, you know, I can think beyond that and do beyond that and not be subjected and subdued by it. So poetry does that for me. I always say much of education, formal education, is misinformation and miseducation, all for the need of indoctrinating.
Yeah, and this is a lovely segue into another question that we've had from Jennifer Lazarek. She thanks you for a very profound and powerful oration. She asks, would you recommend using your book of poetry as a teaching supplement for high school students with the Shakespeare play, or a unit in speeches and or rhetorical devices. She said she really enjoyed your thoughts on economics and the cross-curricular ties that, you know, kind of blend together. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question about education. Yeah, does your work get used in education a lot, and how would you like your work to be used? Do you have a sense of how you think it might be useful for us as teachers to use your work?
Yeah, I'm moved by two things. One, Martin Luther King said, now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. He didn't say tomorrow, he didn't say the future, he didn't say the kids are our future. He said, now is the time. Du Bois, famous intellectual that graduated, one of the first graduates from Harvard, talked much about the talented 10. That's who will save us, is the talented 10. Now I combine those things. Now is the time, not the future. The kids are our future. Now is the time. Now is the time to find the talented 10 who have the talent, but not necessarily the resource or the understanding of resources to create freedom for us, which will allow us to establish a social, economic foundation upon which we can then do what she said. Okay, we can then do what she says. It's almost akin to if I was being attacked and someone had grabbed my wrist and someone grabbed my throat. Which one of them would you deal with first? Obviously, the hand on the throat. You want to remove that. That's the thing that's going to kill you. And so we must deal with this first. And so we deal with that by finding the people who have the talent and the know-how to build the social economic infrastructure to remove this forever.
Yeah. And how do we find that talent? Do you have a sense of what needs to happen for that to be done as a matter of urgency, but also to be done in the right way?
I tell you what we need to stop doing is to glorify, you know, some of the Black imagery that we see out there. We need to stop glorifying, you know, the cars, the jewelry, really find businessmen who we make them our leaders. Right now, our leaders are established by white media. White media tells us who our Black leaders are, who we should look up to. We should establish who those are. Some of our really good lawyers, some of our really good physicians, some of our really good businessmen, because these are the people that have the talent right now to build those infrastructures, but they are marginalized. And again, if I was your subjugator, those are not the people that I would bring to the forefront of your eyes to say, this is who you should emulate. It's not. So when we all begin to understand it's about economics, hopefully we would begin to find each other and start building those pockets of collective economics, changing behavior, building it larger to change behavior. And not in a way in which we are superior, but in a way in which we harmonize equality, harmonize justice and dignity to bring us all together.
Thank you. I mean, this is a beautiful way to end this session. I've just seen the time, and I wish we could go on for another 2 hours. And what I love about this is, you know, I'd so urge people to buy it. The Trembling Tiber. I so urge people to buy it, because it's not, yes, poetry, art for art's sake is a beautiful thing, but it's not just that, it's beyond that. You know, and hearing you talk, you can see the sort of the practical elements of change that this is a doorway to. It's, as you say, no work of art can ever give us the full solution, but it's a doorway to help us expand our thinking into practical aspects that can actually change lives, I believe. So I'm so grateful to you for, you know, coming to our festival and sharing your work
I'm
with us.
grateful to you.
Engaging. Thank you so much. You know, and thank you to everybody for watching. And
no, thank you very much. And yes, thank you.
thank you. And
we become good friends over this,
yes,
and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of your work, and I'm so looking forward to what's the next book and when's it out?
There's a book that's translated into Spanish, and then I'm working on something. I don't want to talk too much about it. It will bear on the musical Hamilton.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, oh gosh, I'm so looking forward to that. Yeah, keep me posted on that, and then when that's out, I'm sure we can do something to celebrate that and sort of you know, maybe an event or something. So yeah, fantastic. I'm so honored that you've taken
the honor's mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and thanks everyone for joining us. It's been a fantastic talk. Thank you all. The chat's going crazy, which is wonderful. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.